Good Wednesday afternoon, everybody. Welcome back down to the library. And with spooky season officially over, but it's not in my book, this is going to be my October wrap up in books. So I had a theme this year where I dealt with vampire fiction. So, I read 8 books. Now, that was a lot compared to the fact that I was super busy at the beginning of October and it just slowed down a little bit, so I definitely did get a little bit more done. So, seen these before, I go by the order in which I've read these books. So without further ado, I'm going to grab my notebook here and get started. The first book I completed was With Teeth by Brian Keene. And I read this on Audible. This is about a town in West Virginia, I believe, that is plagued by this creature that came from the mines. So these 4 friends go out to investigate and they just get ravaged by this creature. This was a very solid read, and it definitely felt like Appalachian horror. Now, I read this because, well, for one, I never read from Brian Keene, and he actually was the host of Scares That Care presents AuthorCon. I didn't get a chance to talk to him, though, but I definitely saw him quite a lot during that con at the beginning of October. But I rated this one 4 stars. Moving on, my next audiobook was Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter by Seth Graham Greene. And this one was kind of disappointing. It dealt more with like the historical side of it, and there were barely any vampires present in this novel. It talked about when Abraham Lincoln was in the White House. There we go. And he was assumed to be a vampire hunter. Henceforth, the title of the book. But I found this one to be forgettable and very dry. So, this one was just okay. I rated it 3 stars. Next up is yet another audiobook. So I really cleaned up well with audiobooks last month. But this one is probably my favorite of the books that I listen to on audio. Haint, a dark vampire novel featuring the Galore family by Sam Brower. This one was a traditional vampire story, and it was about the Galore family and their run-in with this vampire figure. This was actually pretty brutal, and there were a little bit of comparisons to like Dracula, especially with the way the Haint actually looked, because it was more like a bat creature. I really enjoyed this novel, and that ending was kind of heartbreaking. But when he got to like the reveal of who the vampire was, it was even more heartbreaking for the female character, who pretty much became a vampire. So I really dug this one. It was a 5-star. And the next book that I completed was my first physical book. I completed my very first Ray Garton book. This is Live Girls. And this is probably the sleaziest thing that I've read throughout this whole month. In fact, there are 4 books on here that deals with a lot, and I mean a lot, of sex. This is literally about an underground club called Live Girls, and these are strippers that aren't strippers. No, they're vampires. So we follow Davy Owen, and he is lured in to this seedy club, and he becomes infatuated with one of the girls, and she bites him, making him turn slowly into one of them. So it's not long before his love interest goes into like the same bar, and she becomes infected. So it's up to Davy to get his girlfriend out of there before she becomes one of them. But eventually, they both do turn. So Davy goes on a path of revenge and kills whatever vampires he can get to. This started off kind of slow, but once you get into like the real story, it's actually pretty decent. And I actually got a couple more Ray Garton books to hold me over. But I really enjoyed this one. It's a little graphic on the sexual side, but you definitely get a lot of gore in here too. So, really enjoyed this. I gave this 5 stars. Live Girls by Ray Garton. Next up is my first Kindle read, Within the Fog by Charles Welch. And this is the start of a series. I'm terrible at those. But this goes back to like the Croatoan curse, where you have like a whole village just disappeared one night. Well, one of the villagers escaped, and now he is a vampire. So he invades this town in Colorado, I believe, and he just hunts down all the townspeople one by one. Pretty solid book, and definitely open-ended. I mean, once I read book 2, I'll definitely see what's going on. But I rated this 4 stars. Next, The Traveling Vampire Show by Richard Laymon. Yes, I finally read a Richard Laymon novel. And this one was on Audible. This one felt like a coming-of-age story, and you get pretty much 75% of that, and then 25% is the vampire aspect of this. So it's about like some teenagers who come across this mysterious show, and it's pitched to them that Valeria is the most beautiful vampire ever, and they want to get tickets to go to the show to see if Valeria is for real. Well, it turns out Valeria really isn't real. She's kind of like controlled by this organization, if you will, and she just fights to the death. If I haven't read many female sexual encounters, this is the one. But there's another book on here that has more female sexual encounters. So there was a lot of gratuitous nudity in this one. But it started off kind of, I don't know if I'm really into this, but then it got very interesting once you got to like the vampire show. So Valeria just like went toe to toe with random people, and if they were to kill her, they would have won like $500 or something for 5 minutes. Well, Valeria came out on top on every single one of them. But this was a very fun book at the end, but kind of a boring book in the beginning. So I rated this 4 stars. Next up, I have Meet Cute. And that is MEAT. So you know where this is going. This was on my Kindle, and it was just like a 96-page extreme horror novella. That was 1 part cannibal, 1 part romance. So you have like this couple who are the undead, and they just like torture and eat all of these women randomly. But it's one day that our female protagonist falls in love with another female, and Amelia, I believe, she wants to get out of that life with her boyfriend and wants to be with the new vampire chick. So this one was a little weird, and it gets pretty rough at the end. So let's say the female vampire takes control of the boyfriend, and she essentially just mutilates him, and it is gnarly. But I rated this one 3 stars. Okay, I'm back. And finally, the last book that I completed, or in October, was on Halloween. And this is far from a spooky book, but it dealt with vampires. Okay, I'm back. But that 8th and final book was Vampire Nuns Behind Bars by Patrick C. Harrison III, or PC3. This book was wild. So I believe that PC3 kind of like put Mad Libs together. He wanted vampires, he wanted experimentation, he wanted nuns, he wanted showers, and he wanted lesbians. That's exactly this book in grindhouse form. So this is literally about a group of nuns who goes to like this women's prison, and they are under the control of a sadistic warden who experiments on them. And Dr. Ani, or whatever his name is, he's like a mad scientist of sorts, and he turns like these nuns into vampires. But he also does like weird body modifications to all of the female prisoners. Guys, this thing was weird, but so much fun. I mean, almost every other page is just women in the shower, and they're like naked throughout this whole book. There is barely any clothes on any of these women. So, this is the way to write a 70s grindhouse action horror novel. I really enjoyed the hell out of this, but it felt like the ending was rushed. But I gave this one 4 stars. So, he actually did sign it. So, really fun book, and I already read another PC3 short story earlier this month, so you'll see that in my wrap-up for this month. But that was the last book that I finished for October. Vampire Nuns Behind Bars. Exactly what you think it is. So, those were the 8 books that I finished in October, and I am currently going through my Novella November TBR. I already finished 2 books. I finished The Screaming Tree by PC3, and I also finished The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones. But I'm currently making my way through 7 Rabbits and Triggered by Harrison Phillips. So I'm making some leeway on these short novels. So stay tuned for more updates on that. But later on tonight, I will finally give you my October movie wrap-up. So stay tuned for that. And Friday, I'm going to go see Heretic. So I'll get my review on that as well. But other than that, that's all I got for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Adios. Peace.